I'm here talking with my friend and leadership development expert, Carol Lempert. Carol, we obviously know each other, but for
Yeah.
people that, for people that don't know you, haven't had that delight, what does your business do?
I help leaders and their teams increase their executive presence, and I do that by sharing skills from my own background. I'm an actress, so I share skills on how actors have great stage presence. And then that is under the bigger umbrella of personal branding and communication skills and how to have tough conversations with your clients and with the people on your team and your boss and your boss's boss. So under the bigger umbrella of communication and storytelling too.
You talk about the stage and the stage of business. Obviously, right now, that stage looks a little bit different.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what pivots have you made in your own business?
So the pivots that I've been making is thinking about how to virtualize my own content, and more importantly, through the lens of what are the problems that people need solving right now. They need to figure out, like I have some clients that are life science clients, for example, and they do demos of their medical equipment. Well, they can't be going into hospitals to do demos with their medical services equipment in person right now. So how do you translate doing a virtual demo? How do I shoot the camera in a certain kind of way that the person at the receiving end can get my enthusiasm as well as the skill about the device? So that, that's one version. And also helping leaders think about using the platform of Zoom or Teams or Skype, whatever their companies might be using, and not just thinking about it as, oh, I just turned the camera on and it's business as usual.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you need to communicate with the human at the other end of the lens is very different than if they're sitting across the table from you. What are the virtual substitutions for what would be a handshake? Like if I was in a meeting with you and several other people and I walked into the room, I would nod and smile as I sat down to somebody. And they would know that I'm making a personal connection with them separate from all the other people sitting around the table.
Yeah.
So the virtual platform, you can't do that kind of thing. So what are the kinds of substitutions that leaders need to purposely, strategically think about incorporating into their communication to continue deepening and building relationships?
What's one of
Yeah.
those substitutions? What's the virtual handshake?
Yeah, so on some level, part of the virtual handshake is looking right into the camera lens rather than at the person, which is a technical thing to do. But when I
Yeah.
look into the camera lens, you have the experience that I'm looking into your eyes. If I'm looking somewhere else on the screen, I've disengaged from having relationship with you. So that's one technical thing people can start to practice for themselves. But if you're running a meeting, that's maybe subsequential to the content that you might be talking about. And what you want to try to do is get engagement. But when there's 9, 10, 20, 50 people on the call or on the webinar, the viewers start to disengage and become sort of passive viewers in the experience. And what the leader really wants is for their audiences, their teams, their clients to be active participants in what the experience is. And so that's getting really explicit about articulating what you want the behavior on the call to be. So using chat, for example, that I can ask questions of, if let's say I'm on a webinar with 25 people and I'm a leader, I can ask questions of the people who are viewing. So you've just heard me talk about X and you've also heard me talk about Y. At the end of today's call, our goal is to make a decision about X and Y. So everybody take a minute to type into chat what your thoughts are about X versus Y. And then in real time, you can see 25 people sharing their thoughts. And what's interesting about that is that it's almost a way to make a virtual meeting more productive than an in-person meeting. In an in-person meeting, we might have to go around 10 minutes at a time, 25 people to hear what all 25 people have to say. Now we have a 250-minute meeting. Using chat in this kind of way, we get an immediate pulse about where people are leaning. Is it X or Y when we're having the meeting? So it's thinking about how the platform works. How do I leverage the technology that helps me in a strategic kind of way create connection and activity in the conversation, in the webinar, in the meeting?
You're talking about something really interesting because obviously there are a lot of things that are worse or more difficult or more challenging in a virtual meeting, but you're describing some ways in which if you use the technology with the right kind of humanity, that some things could actually be better. How are you helping your customers, your leaders, adapt and thrive and maybe actually improve in some ways out of this?
Yes. It's important for leaders to give some thought to everybody on their team and what their own personal situation is. You might have someone on your team who's young, just graduated college, they've moved to the city that they're working in for that job specifically, they're single, and they're all by themselves. So they're going to be struggling with different kinds of things during this COVID crisis, maybe just getting motivated, maybe working too long, getting burnt out, maybe feeling lonely and sad, a touch of depression might be setting in because there's no human contact. That's a different thing that's going on with that employee compared to the single mother that might have 3 children that she is also homeschooling at home, and they only own 1 computer, and she also has to use that computer for work. That's a whole other kind of level. And so for a leader really to let, leaders use spreadsheets to think in detail about how to do business problem solving kinds of things. I've been recommending to my leaders, create a spreadsheet, put the name of every single person who's on your team, and make some notes about what's going on in their life personally and how you might be able to brainstorm with them to make their work responsibilities easier for them to execute on. So for someone who's homeschooling their children, for example, maybe that means that a meeting with that person at 5 o'clock at night, so that they have the bandwidth to use the computer, is going to be more productive and easier time than doing it at 10 o'clock in the morning when one of your kids has to be talking to their teachers, and being sensitive to that. So it's really upping the empathy and upping the perspective taking of who's at the other end of my call, my conversation. So those are a lot of the things that I've been talking to leaders about.
Those sound like things that in some ways would be characteristics we'd want a leader to have at any time.
Yeah.
But these seem like times that are really a crucible for leadership development.
Yeah. How people show up now is going to impact their reputation for years to come.
Yeah.
And so leaders that are sensitive to what the needs of their clients are, for sure, and certainly their team, if they show up for their team, being sensitive to what the people on their team really need from them, what they're going to engender is loyalty for a long, long time. If they don't do that, once things get back to some semblance of normal, people might start to be either looking around for other kinds of opportunities. We'll see what happens with the economy, but maybe certainly not as engaged and loyal to the organization as they might have been before.
If there was one message you could share out to business leaders in the world right now, what would it be?
A lot of what business leaders have been asking me about is how to just manage their own day-to-day energy and their own day-to-day sense of uncertainty. And what I often am talking to people about are, so what's on your agenda today? Like, how are you going to execute on what's the thing that you can do right now in front of you that is positive, small, forward action? And so that might be thinking carefully about what time of day you're going to have a conversation with a particular individual on your team, because you tend to be a high energy person in the morning and you have a difficult message to deliver. And so let's make sure you do that at a time that resonates for you. That might be, wow, you've been staring at the screen for 12 straight hours and you haven't taken a break, and you're trying to crank out work, but it's taking you 2 hours to put a thought together. Maybe you really need to put the computer down and walk around the apartment or go outside, get some fresh air, do some stretching, drink some water, stay hydrated, get some food, all of those essential kind of self-care things. But really thinking about one foot in front of the other and not necessarily what am I going to need to be doing 6 months from now? Yeah, I think not only in times of crisis like this, but I do think generally it's a good way to be productive in life as well. And also be aware that multitasking, so trying to answer your email and your text and have a call at the same time, is not doing the next right thing. Your task switching back and forth, and you're not doing any of those 3 things well. So pick one thing and do that thing well. And in the long run, that's going to help you with your energy, and it's going to help you with your productivity as well.
Fantastic. If somebody wants to reach you, they want to know a little bit more about the leadership work that you do, how can they find you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, obviously we're here on LinkedIn, so that they can link with me on LinkedIn. And I have a website, which is my name, carollempert.com, L-E-M like lemon, P like Peter, E-R-T. I'm on Twitter. I have a Facebook page as well. And the other thing that I can offer is I've been running a series here on LinkedIn that I call Ask Carol. And so if there's a particular question that you would like to run by me that you're struggling with on your own, I would be happy to answer that question for you. Last week, somebody asked me around Zoom fatigue, how to manage Zoom fatigue.
Mm.
The week before, somebody asked me specifically, how do I get more telepresence in my presence, when I'm working in a virtual world? So any question like that that I could help with, I'd be happy to.